Okay, let's talk about nukers.
Shoot him, kid!
Hello everybody, I'm Roadblock and this is a Raid Shadow Legends video. I'm very excited today to make this video and talk specifically about nukers. I recently did a video where I'm going to basically said that I'm going to talk about all the different roles that I feel like exist in Raid Shadow Legends. Feel free to comment on this video or that video if there's any other areas that you'd like to see me cover. I recently saw someone ask me to cover Siege. I feel like I haven't done a Siege video in a while, so I think when the next Siege pops up in a couple of days, I might make a video on that as well. And so I love your comments and your feedback because it really helps me kind of move my content forward to, give you guys what you want. But I really want to talk about the individual roles, and today we're going to talk about nukers. So what is a nuker? Let's kind of do like an overall breakdown of what a nuker is. So for me, a nuker is going to be somebody that does wave damage or arena damage. It doesn't have to be AoE or single target. It can be both. I mean, we have single target nukers, we have AoE nukers, it really doesn't matter. But the main concept is that primary way that you expect them to do damage is going to be towards other champions and not necessarily towards bosses. Listen up, I just got a new promo link that you can use to follow along with me on my latest free-to-play adventure and get a free Elenaril as well as 3 more powerful epics as you level up. Here's how to do it. Log out of Plarium and Play and uninstall. Click the link in the description and register with a brand new email. Launch Raid and complete the tutorial. Go to your inbox and claim your first champ. Don't miss out on your chance to get Elenaril right after signing up, as well as Fayne, Uugo, and Tagoar as you progress through Raid. Click on my link right now and let's crush this together. Now I want to put a big asterisk on that because the reality is eventually your champions become so powerful that they just also do a ton of damage on bosses. I haven't looked at these numbers in a while, but I know Terras, Teox, those are both still champions who are, not only incredibly strong nukers, but are also destroying Hydra and doing tons of damage. Trunda is probably the example that everybody knows. And now we have other newer nukers coming out, like the dog recently, Titus, where they're doing tons of damage on bosses and probably doing tons of damage in waves as well. So there are definitely intricacies in this that I may not cover specifically. Like, I just want to be clear that what I'm talking about here is just a generalization because, I have a pretty strong account, like a reasonable, I'm not top end game I'm not gonna, my gear isn't crazy. My champions aren't out of this world, but I have yet to really achieve that level of performance to get the massive amount of damage out of my regular nukers versus, enemy max HP and things like that. Like, my Thor hits really hard, my Harima hits really hard. In Hydra, I use them there, but I'm not going to use them necessarily for Chimera or Clan Boss or outside of wave clearing. Like, I use Thor in Fire Knight for decreased speed and extra damage. But anyways, so I just want to be clear that this is a very, very deep kind of class when it comes to Raid, and I think that while I may cover a generalization, I don't know that I'm going to do such a deep dive into all the nuance that goes into nukers. So for just to keep it clear for you guys, we're mostly going to focus on wave clearing content and arena type content when it comes to nukers today for this video. If you'd like a very specific kind of instance of other things, let me know in the comments and maybe I can do that. I don't like making videos of champions that I don't have, so Terras isn't probably going to be somebody that I make a video on anytime soon. I do have Teox on my free-to-play, but I haven't logged on to that in like a month now, so, it is what it is. But, alright, so overall, like I said, I think of nukers as somebody that is specifically designed with the intention of destroying enemies in arena or groups of enemies in wave clear, that sort of thing. So a common one that you hear a lot about is going to be like Harima. You've got Trunda. These are really the two that I talk about the most because they're just at the top of my list here. Thor is another one. And then why are they at the top of the list? Because they are the ones that have the 5 and the 6-star blessing. Rhodos is another one. I have Rhodos naked right now, But yeah, when I'm talking nukers, these are kind of what I'm speaking toward. Rhonda, a great one is Half-Rack. If you're lucky enough to get a Half-Rack and utilize him, he's a great nuker. You know, Elenaril is one that falls in that category and is a void nuker that I wish I had better blessings for, so maybe I could use him more often. Baron is an OG one that probably could still see some play today, but not really at the highest levels, I feel like, in today's world when it comes to this game. So we're gonna focus mostly on Harima and Trunda, and maybe even He-Man a little bit. I may not go that deep. I mean, we've got Eric's as well. I may not go that deep into HP nukers because my account isn't that deep there on specifically nukers. I guess I could do Empress, perhaps. Okay. All right. So we kind of discussed the overall role of what these nukers are going to be doing. My opinion on what I'm calling a nuker today. Let's talk about how to gear them next. So we'll start with Harima. Harima, I'm starting with her because she is just my GOAT on my account right now. She is probably my strongest built nuker. That's not to say that she is the best nuker I have on my account, because I have a lot of other ones. The bigger issue that I run into when it comes to my attack-based nukers is that I have so many of them. So my gear gets divvied up between them very often, and I may not be able to get one that is so powerful. When it comes to defense-based nukers, I do have some good ones in Stultus. Ragash can hit pretty hard himself. Obviously, Marius. But Harima having that 6-star blessing has made it very easy for me to say, okay, all my gear is going on this chick, which is what I've done. So I have pretty much my best, for the most part, possible gear on her. I am a little disappointed in her current build. I would like to complete a 4-piece stone skin on her. So I'm looking for one more piece of stone skin, whether it's a crit damage amulet or a defense percentage chest with 22% crit rate. That's the big key factor, because, or 20, what would it be? 19% crit rate would be the necessary factor there. Now, I haven't looked at my account in a while, but let's kind of avoid some of that and let's talk about a defense-based nuker like Harima, like some of the other ones that I've mentioned that can really help you out in Arena. And there's a lot of nuance here. So for example, Marius is defense based but also enemy max HP, so what I say for Harima might not necessarily be the same for Marius, and that goes for other champions as well. So for Harima, when it comes to building her out, I go for crit damage on the bracers. This is kind of generally what most creators that I've seen do. It might be harder for you to do in the early game. You might be in a situation where, well, I can't hit my crit rate totals if they're in crit damage gauntlets. That's totally fine. If you're not there yet, use crit rate so that you can hit your crit rate and try and find as much crit damage and stats as you can across the other pieces. This is something that comes with time. Gearing is not something that's going to happen overnight. You need to farm it, you need to build it up, you need to work at it, and it, like I said, it does take time to do. I do try to look for crit rate in the substat if possible, because it does help since you're losing a large amount of crit rate from those gauntlets. Since they're crit damage, it does help to find a good amount of crit rate on them so you can find ease in the other areas. When it comes to the chest plate, I'm looking for main stat. A defense-based nuker, you're looking for defense percentage. For a HP-based nuker, you're looking for HP percentage, and for an attack-based nuker, you're looking for attack percentage chest, right? Here, you're looking for crit rate, crit damage, speed are probably going to be your top 3 most wanted. Now, there's some nuance there. If you have a nuker that also needs accuracy, you might want to find an accuracy substat there. If you have, you know, maybe they do damage with defense and HP, right? So you might want to have HP substat, HP percent substat, or something along those lines. We'll talk about speed a little bit more later, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. Crit rate, crit damage, and speed are really good substats to find here. That fourth one can kind of vary depending on your approach. the reason that I'm kind of mentioning those here on the chest is because the other one would be defense percent and that, or attack percent, and that is your main stat, right? So you really want to find stats here that might be harder to find in your other top 3 areas. I'm still at the point on my account where I need speed on my boots. We'll talk about speed in a little bit, but that's my general recommendation. However, there are exceptions to this. If you can hit the speeds that you're looking for from your champion and you don't need speed boots to do that, then by all means, main stat boots are viable. Attack percent, defense percent can be very beneficial to you. Now, for me, I'm not there yet. I have a speed in my mind that I want to try to get close to and or hit. So that's why I'm running speed boots on this particular build. But there are builds that I have where I run main stat boots, depending. So it's all kind of dependent on what your account can do. But generally, this is my 3 bottom tier pieces recommendation. For your top 3 pieces, the main stats are always the same for each one of these. So for the substats, I'm looking for crit rate, crit damage again for a nuker. Speed again is something that I would also like to see, as you can see here. And for the weapon, I can't roll defense in a substat on the weapon. For a shield, I can't roll attack as a substat for the weapon, which is why I especially want to try and find, this is just my opinion, guys, when I'm building a champion, I really want to find a large amount of crit rate or crit damage on the weapon that does not correspond with their main stat, weapon or shield, right? Why do I say that? Well, because I can't get any additional damage out of this weapon for this champion. So if this is a piece that can't increase my damage for a defense-based champion, then it benefits me, in my opinion, to put a ton of crit rate on this item, because it's a substat that I want, and that allows me the freedom on my other slots to potentially find the speed, to find the main stat that I'm looking for, since I can't find it here. So that's kind of what I try to do. It's not always possible, but it's just something to think about that maybe you haven't thought of before. And I could be completely wrong. This is just my strategy. So for attack-based nukers, I try to find really heavy in the crit rate shields. Crit rate and crit damage and speed, right, are what I'm looking for. But if they roll a bunch in crit rate, I'm going to be very happy about that, because I can take that shield and utilize it to build further out some of my other champions. So you can see a big crit rate roll here for an attack-based nuker. I don't think Trunda has a big, no, she does. Yeah, big crit rate here as well, because it's just going to kind of help me find those totals. Now, you can't always do it, but if you can, it does help you at times to be able to get flexibility in your build. So here I have a decent, this is a decent amount. It's nothing to go crazy about, but a decent amount of crit rate, which allows me to find flexibility elsewhere. So it's just something I think about when I'm building, but it's not always viable. And I'm sure a lot of people use the optimizer to build their champions. Nothing wrong with that. I use it sometimes maybe to get started, and then maybe I modify it to get more specific values that I'm looking for. For the helmet, you do want to find crit rate, crit damage, your main stat, because you can get main stats on here, and speed if you can. So pretty much that. When it comes to the bottom, your accessories, you're going to want your main stat on your ring, crit damage in the neck. Now, I have been told before by my community that you can get away, if you get lucky, you can do main stat here if you get really good crit damage rolls in the substats. I've never had that happen. Personally, I've never been able to get the crit damage values from a necklace that isn't crit damage. So I've been told it can happen. I've not seen it. It's hard to do, at least for me and my account. So, you know, take that information with a grain of salt. I always go crit damage on the neck for a nuker, just point blank. For the banner, I'm looking for main stat here, but I might also be looking for accuracy if they are a nuker that needs accuracy. Those can be frustrating to use sometimes because you do want to get more out of the main stat here, in my opinion. I'm looking for substats for substats, I'm looking for speed, especially on the banner, and then main stat in a percentage on the substats. So I'm getting a ton out of this particular banner, as you can see here, getting, what is that, 32% defense off of this banner alone, and still getting 10 speed, which I'm very, happy with. So that's generally how I'm going to gear and build a nuker. Like I said, there's nuance here. Some nukers you might want accuracy. For example, Thor. I have accuracy banner on my Thor, and I am, supplementing his ignore defense set, which we're going to go do a deeper dive into ignore defense here in a second, with perception and feral stuff to try and keep that accuracy value high enough, but he does sacrifice some attack in that, only having 6,500, whereas my Harima, I'm able to get up to 7,600 on her defense, because for the provoke that she places, it can't be resisted by demon spawn, which is really where I'm using her, and I don't care that much about the decreased attack on her A1. In the areas where I use her, I'm usually bringing somebody that brings decreased attack if it matters to me. So, okay, so we kind of talked about how to gear, but let's talk about gear sets now specific to nukers. Just checking my time there. So ignore defense sets are going to be a very important part of your building of a nuker. Now, you may not be there on your account. This is going to be a theme throughout this whole series that I'm trying to do, where this advice is not necessarily going to help you. On many of my free-to-play accounts, it took time to get that savage gear, to get that lethal gear built up in order to go with a full set of ignore defense gear. But ignoring defense is a very, very crucial way to do tons of damage in Raid Shadow Legends. Defense is the best mitigator, right? You can have a ton of HP, but if you don't have any defense, champions are going to hit you for that amount of HP. It's just a fact. It will just happen, because people can build these champions to craziness, right? So the sets that you're going to be looking for are Savage. Savage ignores 25% of enemy defense. This set that I have on my Harima drops from Dark Fae, who's active at the time of this recording, is active in Doom Tower right now. So I highly recommend farming Dark Fae at the highest difficulty that you can for the next couple of weeks, because this set I think is amazing. It's the same thing. It's a 4-piece set just like Savage, and it also ignores 25% of enemy defense, but you get a free 10% crit rate, meaning that you really only need to build to 90% crit rate. Now, obviously, when you look at your stats, this is included in the percentage, right? So this 103%, 10 of that is coming from my gear, just to be clear. But that means that the pieces perhaps need to either not have or roll less crit rate, so you can get away and have an easier chance of building these champions. So I love the lethal set because it's basically Savage plus. It's better than Savage almost, always, because it just gives you those extra stats while still giving you that 25% ignoring of defense. Other sets to be considered when it comes to nukers are going to be the Instinct set. You can see I don't have a lot of this collect. I'm not a big fan of this set because I'm losing 5% of ignore defense. Yes, I'm gaining 12% speed, but for the most part, I'm able to hit the speed totals that I'm looking for on my champions, so I don't value this set as highly as others. Then you also have Merciless. Merciless is a 9-piece set. Merciless is arguably better than Savage and Lethal because you can get 35% ignore defense. That's 10% more ignore defense, but that's a 6-piece version of the set. And if you are able to go all the way to 9-piece, there's a 15% chance of an extra turn, which is massive. That's very, very good. If you can get a 9-piece Merciless on a champion, there is a ton of value in that. So I highly recommend Merciless if you can do it. Now, Merciless does lean towards attack-based nukers because it gives you an additional 25% attack between these. So that is worth noting. However, I wouldn't feel bad because of the extra ignore defense, the extra speed, crit damage, and the chance of an extra turn, I wouldn't feel bad putting that on a defense-based nuker if I could. It's not ideal. I won't even go that it's not ideal. It's not the most efficient. You're losing out. This means nothing, you know. The 1-piece and 5-piece means very little to you. But I think that's an okay trade-off for a chance at an extra turn, a chance to reduce a skill cooldown, and to ignore 35% defense. So it's a possibility, something to keep in mind. Now, the other one that kind of falls in here is going to be the Slayer set. Slayer set is another 9-piece set, which ignores 30% of enemy defense when using AoE skills. That is a very important distinction, and it's still a 6-piece set. If it's a 9-piece set, you have a 30% chance to deal additional AoE damage based on damage dealt by AoE skills. So you ideally want this to be on champions that have all AoE hits, or the big focus of them is their AoE hit. The only champion that I have been able to get Slayer on in a 9-piece is Seer, who the primary damage dealer for her is Karma Burn, which is an AoE hit. So I don't get any ignore defense on her A1, but I'm not really looking for that. I'm looking for just her big hit to do that. So important note there. Now I think if you're looking to supplement those 4-piece sets or even the 6-piece sets, you could try and go with something like those that I just mentioned. These are the live arena sets, Impulse and Zeal. Also, you could go with the speed set. You've seen me in situations where I want accuracy. You can supplement with those sets as well to try and hit those goals if necessary. So I feel like I've touched on generally what gear you're looking for and how to gear them stats wise. Let's now talk about speed. Speed is a critical factor when it comes to your damage dealers. I personally am looking for a 250 speed is what I'd like to be at on my nukers at this stage in the game. High-end players, they're not looking for 250 speed, they're looking for way faster. But for me, that is kind of a goal that I try to hit if possible. Sometimes I'm way slower than that. How do I supplement being slower than that? Stone Skin, right? I have Stone Skin on my Mezimel because she's pretty dang slow, only 200 speed. So that Stone Skin allows her to stay alive a little bit more. For my Thor, I'm at 210 speed. I'm far below the threshold that I would want to be at, but for me, Thor is actually more of a PvE nuker where I use him. Therefore, I can get away with that speed a little bit more because he's getting so much support. So speed is going to vary. It's going to be based on what you're seeing and what kind of boosting you can do for those champions. So you can get away with slightly slower speeds if you are able to have a really fast Arbiter and maybe a reasonably or really fast Armands or Fabian, because you can buy time using their crowd control abilities to let your slower nuker catch up in turn meter, right? So those are options, but remember, those are also counterable. There's things like polymorph and things like that. So when that strategy, you know, what's the saying? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. You may go into an arena fight with a plan, and then you get polymorphed, your plan goes to hell. It's nice to have a little bit faster of a nuker to, you know, oh shoot, I can't crowd control them, but my Harima, she's really hard to kill. Okay, good. She got a turn. Now we're going to take you guys out, right? So now, how do you enhance these champions? This is something that I think is slept on a lot when it goes for nukers. You're going to want to bring somebody to enhance their main stat and turn meter and crowd control. So we've touched on that a little bit with these champions like Fabian, Armands. Arbiter is always really good for your nukers, or your attack based especially, because she's going to give you a ton of turn meter and increase attack. That's something that I think people forget about a lot when it comes to Raid Shadow Legend. They'll see a video that talks about Harima being this really great nuker. They build her, they throw her in as their nuker. Let's say a team that, let's just go with what I talked about, Arbiter, Fabian, Armands, and Harima. And they've built her really well. They're very excited, and she doesn't kill the enemy team. She didn't have increased defense. Now, is that as necessary today as it used to be? No, I actually don't think the team I run, I don't think I have an increased defense champion on that team. I'll be completely honest with you for my Harima. But it makes a big difference, especially when you're in the early stages of building and developing your account. Having an increase to your main stat is a massive, massive boost to get way more damage out of those champions. So self-buffing champions are really, really good nukers. For example, one of my favorites is Stultus because he gives himself increased defense. There are champions that give themselves increased accuracy as well. Increase attack as well. So Thor doesn't necessarily need Arbiter in that team. So these are things to consider when you're talking about these champions. Ones that buff themselves are going to be very powerful and effective for your account. Harima is somebody that I really need increased defense for. And when it comes to my account, increased defense is something that I would love to find more of. I think I should probably pair Marius and Harima is probably a future endeavor, but you can see that I don't really have anybody that can AoE buff outside of Padric, who I've tried to build, but I can't get the speeds on him that I want. Obviously, Mithrala brings it, but there's definitely situations where I'm like, I don't really know how to build the team, so that's why I kind of avoid bringing an increased defense when it comes to my Harima, but in other situations, I really try to do that. So, running out of time a little bit here. If you guys would like to see like a follow-up video where I talk about more about how to enhance these champions, let me know in the comments. But we are going to end this video here. I'm going to keep my outro short and sweet. Thanks for watching. If you're new here, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.